The modern South Korean music industry operates as a tight oligopoly. A handful of massive conglomerates control the vast majority of the cultural capital and distribution networks. Operating entirely outside this framework is I-DLE, a 5-member group managed by Cube Entertainment, a mid-sized independent label. This data table compares the top-tier girl groups of the current generation. Despite lacking corporate backing, I-DLE matches or exceeds their heavily funded peers, logging 2.36 billion Spotify streams and 385 perfect all-kill hours on the Korean charts. This line graph shows the industry-standard 7-year decay curve, where non-conglomerate groups face a steep commercial drop. But plotting I-DLE's actual streaming and sales data, their trajectory sharply breaks away, surging upward to a commercial peak between years 5 and 8. We are going to deconstruct the specific operational playbook, from contract negotiation tactics to global touring logistics, that allowed this group to outmaneuver corporate giants through 2026. They survived an oligopoly by restructuring their foundational business mechanics, turning themselves into a highly optimized, independent intellectual property. The primary existential threat to any K-pop group is the standard 7-year corporate contract. When it expires, groups without massive leverage usually dissolve or lose their most valuable assets. This timeline shows the contractual obligations for the members of I-DLE. Because leader and core producer Soyeon signed her individual deal before the group officially launched, her contract expired in November 2024, a full 6 months before the rest of the members. Notice what happens to the timeline here in November 2024. Soyeon weaponized this 6-month gap, publicly rapping about her impending free agency at concerts and the 2024 Mama Awards, triggering immediate market panic for her label. Competing agencies, including HYBE's KOZ Entertainment, began circulating acquisition rumors, applying immense external pressure on Cube's executives. The climax of this collective bargaining occurred at the 2024 Melon Music Awards. After securing Record of the Year, the group announced a full 5-member contract renewal, securing total creative autonomy and highly favorable profit splits. To codify this corporate victory, the group executed a comprehensive brand overhaul, timed exactly to their 7th anniversary in May 2025. The visual rebrand dropped the gendered prefix G, which stood for the Korean word for girls. They simplified their typography to an all-lowercase design and introduced a 5-point star logo, signaling an age-agnostic, structurally unified identity. They deployed this new brand equity to the public through the release of a special mini-album titled We Are I-DLE. This renegotiation process functioned as an internal hostile takeover. The members successfully cemented absolute control over their own commercial future. Early in their career, the group's success relied on a significant structural risk, a single point of failure where nearly all research, development, and production depended entirely on Soyeon. Before their 2025 rebrand, this centralized R&D pipeline produced a highly lucrative run of satirical hits, including Tomboy, Queen Card, and Nude. The track Nude operated as a direct manipulation of search engine optimization. By titling the song the Korean word for nude, they hijacked predatory algorithms. Anyone searching for illicit imagery of the group was instead flooded with vibrant, theatrical art criticizing the objectification of women. Following the rebrand, they shifted away from satire toward 2010s recession pop and minimalist hip-hop. Their 2026 track Mono featured direct, aggressive lyrics advocating for the LGBTQ+ community, entirely abandoning the safety of hidden metaphors. This breakdown table for the We Are EP illustrates how the group solved their single-producer burnout risk. They shifted to a decentralized, multi-track co-production framework, distributing writing credits across all 5 members. Look specifically at tracks 3 and 4. This new pipeline allowed them to diversify their sound, integrating Minnie's atmospheric synthpop and Yuki's retro disco influences. And down here on track 6, we see Shuhua, traditionally a non-writing member, contributing lyrics. Encouraging this level of participation late in their career deepens the members' long-term psychological investment in the collective brand. Decentralizing creative power mitigated the risk of creative burnout and dramatically expanded the group's stylistic reach across different demographics. This flowchart maps out their transition from relying solely on collective output to developing a multi-brand synergy model, establishing 5 distinct pillars branching out from the core identity. Starting on the far left, Soyeon positioned herself as an industry producer and experimental hyperpop artist. Moving to the next node, Minnie leveraged her trilingual abilities to target the international Western market with alternative dream pop. Yuki secured massive influence across the Asia-Pacific and Chinese markets, driven by her 90s boom bop tracks and commissions like the official theme for Shanghai Disneyland. Miyan established her individual positioning as a classic R&B vocalist, targeting the highly lucrative demographic for cinematic and television soundtracks. Shuha expanded the group's reach into the cinematic market entirely, wrapping production as the lead actress in a Taiwanese feature film. These 5 parallel vectors act as a diversified investment portfolio. Each member captures a distinct international demographic, funneling that cultural capital straight back to the central group. While their digital footprint scales infinitely at zero marginal cost, the group still has to navigate the harsh physical limitations and financial realities of global offline touring. In April 2026, Cube Entertainment completely canceled the 10-city North American arena leg of the group's Syncopation World Tour. This equation calculates the break-even ticket volume. It is the exact analytical tool we need to understand why this cancellation was mathematically necessary. The numerator here, total fixed costs, represents the massive upfront capital required for a K-pop tour. This includes ocean freight for heavy equipment, international flights, and high arena fees. Down in the denominator, Western inflation forced the average ticket price up to a hard ceiling. This suppressed demand, driving projected sales below the break-even volume, signaling a net loss. The agency triggered a rational stop-loss protocol. They abandoned the Western arenas entirely and pivoted all touring resources to high-margin Asian markets. The scale of these alternative venues is massive. They sold out 36,000 seats at the Taipei Dome and immediately targeted Hong Kong's Kai Tak Arena. Canceling a Western tour is often perceived as a failure of popularity. In reality, it was an exercise in ruthless logistical pragmatism, executed specifically to protect corporate profit margins. Canceling the North American dates bought the group the time they needed to focus on their highly anticipated July 2026 comeback, rumored to feature the aggressive dark rock track Crow. To maintain their status as an independent powerhouse, the group needs to execute 3 specific optimizations going forward. First, they must downscale future Western tours. Moving from massive arenas to mid-sized historical theaters will cut fixed costs and build demand through scarcity marketing. Second, Soyeon must maintain overarching creative direction over future albums to ensure the brand's aesthetic remains cohesive and doesn't fragment under their new decentralized writing model. Third, they need to balance the direct, progressive social advocacy of their recent tracks with the poetic, multi-layered literary satire that defined their earlier hits. Over the last 8 years, I-DLE built a top-tier industry empire entirely outside the safety net of the Big Four conglomerates. Their trajectory proves an independent intellectual property can monopolize global culture. They achieved this not through endless corporate capital, but through structural autonomy, their algorithmic savvy, and absolute creative control.